In The Thing About Jellyfish by Allie Benjamin, we left off with Susie visibly upset that Franny was ignoring her. She wanted attention and wanted Franny to reach out after she had given her the sign that she was one of those girls. Franny had always told Susie, "Let me know, give me a big sign if I become one of those girls." In the previous section of the text, Susie had given Franny that sign, and Franny still will not talk to her. In the next section of the book, it starts with a flashback of Franny's funeral. The main characters in this text are Franny, Susie, Dr. Legs, Mrs. Turton, and Justin. All of these people showed up at Franny's funeral, which connect to Susie. At the funeral, Susie begins asking her mom questions such as, who are all these people? She is confused as to why so many people are here that she had never seen in Franny's life before. As the funeral goes on, she begins to feel hatred, not sad, at the girls in front of her that had changed Franny. She also hated all the people for giving up on Franny and not finding the real reason as to why she died. Though they just say she drowned, Susie still believes there's an underlying issue. During the funeral, Susie made a vow to continue to find out what had really happened to Franny. It then goes to present time where Justin and Franny are becoming friends and talking during their science lab. At the beginning of the text, Susie considered him not a person she would ever talk to and realized that he was more like Franny than her. Towards the end of the text, they actually have become friends and science partners. Justin talks to Franny about his medicine he takes and how it helps him with his anxiety. This would be a section of the book where I would talk to my students and discuss different coping mechanisms. I would integrate our social skills text second step and discuss different ways to cope with things. Franny then goes back to her therapist, Dr. Legs, and talks to her for the first time in 6 months. At this session, she asks Dr. Legs, "How do you say goodbye?" Dr. Legs thinks that she's talking about saying goodbye to Franny, when really, Susie is thinking about how to say goodbye to her family and friends as she buys a plane ticket to Australia to go meet Jamie, the science specialist. In the conclusion of the text, Susie uses her dad's credit card to buy a ticket to Australia to meet Jamie. She doesn't tell anyone she is leaving, but buys the tickets 2 days in advance, that way she can't back out. Susie calls Franny's mom and tells her that Franny always had admired Susie and that she had wished she could be more like her with not caring. This struck Susie big time because of how Franny acted in the end. This is an important part in the text because Susie really starts to realize that people cared about her, which frustrates her because she's trying to leave to go to Australia, and now people are saying nice things to her, where throughout the text, people really don't care. As she goes to board the plane to Australia, she is told she cannot leave the country without her parents. Susie becomes upset, and for the first time in the books, she cries. This is an important part because throughout the book, Susie is not fully grieved or taken into account that Franny has died. Susie falls asleep at the airport and wakes up to her mom and brother. At this point, they are finally having a conversation about Franny and her death. This is the first time that Susie has been aware that other people are grieving, not just her. This is the first time in the text where people are open with Susie in their beliefs on how she dies. In the conclusion of the text, Susie begins communicating more with her family, and in the end receives a phone call from Justin. She calls him her friend to her mom, and for the first time since Franny, she knows that she is a genuine friend. She ends up going to the school dance and makes friends with another girl named Sarah, who also says that she isn't friends with these people, she just knows them, which strikes Susie. Susie and Sarah become friends. In the end, Susie changes so much by going through the grieving process. She opens herself up to new people. In Visible Learning for Literacy, many strategies are given. Many of these I would use within the text selection. For this specific selection that I read, I would use a strategy of word cards to implement with my students. The text states, I use these words cards as I introduce new terms for them, and then they use these for rehearsal and memorization. This text, specifically this selection, contains a lot of rich vocabulary that I believe would be new for my students to read. They would have a hard time understanding the text without using a vocabulary or word card strategy. I would use a strategy to help provide a teacher-produced definition, a non-example of the word or an opposite of the word, or antonym, and an illustration of the word. With using different strategies listed above within this strategy, it can help students better understand the vocabulary within the text by providing them with multiple opportunities to understand the word. Some of the words I would use with my students include smeared, admired, evidence, immortality, and exaggerating. Within this selection, I would also use a lot of peer collaboration and journaling. There are many thought-provoking events that take place within this section. Some of the questions I would ask for either collaboration, discussion, and journaling include, why did Susie have such a hard time saying goodbye to her family? Why did Susie decide to call Franny's mom? How did Justin and Susie become such good friends? How did Susie decide to open up to Justin? Why did Susie finally decide to talk to Dr. Legs after 6 months of silence? How do you think Susie was grieving within this book? This was one of the best books that I have read, and I can't wait to share it with my students. I believe that they will really like it and be able to connect to the text because of some of the trauma that some of them have experienced. Others will connect with this novel because of the science background and making friendships.